Hey everyone, welcome back to my series where I'm showing you how you can take watercolor paintings like this one and turn them into repeating patterns that you can use on things like fabric like this, or wallpaper, textiles, home decor, gift wrap, and the list goes on. Today's video is the much awaited tutorial where I'm actually showing you how you can create the pattern in Photoshop. So if you haven't seen all the previous videos in this series, I would recommend taking a look at those where we go into things like how I set up my files and how I clean up and isolate my motifs to prepare for this step, because this one will make a lot more sense if you do that. But without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Just a reminder of where we left off last time. We cut out all of our motifs and placed them on individual layers, which we can see here. And so with the selection tool activated, this will allow us to pick any of our motifs and move them around independently of everything around them. So this is a crucial part of building our patterns. And now we get to start the actual exciting part of putting these together into a repeat. So the first step in doing this is to actually create a new document. So we're going to leave this Forest Floor Motifs document open, but we're going to open up a new one by going to File, New, and then we're going to set up a document that's, I'm going to do for today, 24 inches by 24 inches with a high resolution of 300 pixels per inch. Now, just a note here that your repeat does not have to be a square. A lot of people think that it does need to be a square, and it doesn't. In fact, most of my repeats are built on some kind of rectangular canvas. But for today's tutorial, we're going to stick with a square. And if you want to follow closely along, I recommend that you use these same dimensions just so that we're all working from the same page. So we can hit Create. And we've opened up a new file here and a new tab. So the first thing we're actually going to do here is save this file. So we can go to File, Save As. And I'm going to save it on my computer. And I would recommend you navigate to the same folder where you saved your motifs pattern. Now, I am going to name this Forest Floor Block. And we're going to save this as a large document format file. Again, this is because it's likely that this file is going to exceed 2 gigabytes. And that's the limit for a standard Photoshop file. So a large document format file will allow us to kind of get bigger than that limitation. The reason that I call this Forest Floor Block is because this is the document that we're going to be using to create the actual repeating block. You could also call this Forest Floor Tile. A lot of folks will also consider this the repeating tile. So whatever makes the most sense to you, but that's kind of the nomenclature behind this. So with all of that set, I'm going to hit Save, and I'm just overwriting a previous version of this that I did to prep for this tutorial. Okay, so now that our new file is saved, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go actually back into our Forest Floor Motifs file, and I'm going to bring our entire motifs folder over into the Forest Floor Block file. So what we can do is actually just click and drag this entire group over into this new tab and just place it in this document. Now you may get this pop-up that says there's a mismatch between the source and destination color profiles. To be honest, this is not a warning that I have done a deep dive into, but I haven't had too much issue just hitting OK on this one. It looks like there's 2 different kinds of RGB profiles that we're working with. I just hit OK, and it's been okay so far, so apologies for not knowing all of the ins and outs of this one, but it hasn't been catastrophic for me yet, so hopefully it's the same for you. Okay, great. So now our motifs are in our new document, but you can see they're kind of way too big for this canvas. But I do actually like to see this because, as a reminder, this is a relatively large canvas at 24 inches by 24 inches. So that's 2 feet across each way. And these motifs are blown up really large and they look great. So if you can imagine this in real life, you know, we can say that we know that our motifs, because they were scanned in at such high resolution, will look okay at a pretty large scale. But for this canvas, this is a little bit too large. So what I'm going to do is, with everything still selected, I'm going to hit Command-T, and we're going to open up that transform tool. And so you might be too zoomed in to even see that it's active, but if you zoom out, you can see the border for all of the motifs that's based on the dimensions of our previous document. So I'm just going to take the corner and I'm going to hold down Shift to keep the dimensions constant, or the ratio of width to height constant. And I'm just going to drag this down. This is still a little bit too large, so let's keep going. Okay, great. So this fits well into our document. So I'll hit Enter to apply this change, and then hit Command-0 to zoom to the full extent of this canvas again. So to build our pattern in Photoshop, we're going to be using a tool called Pattern Preview. And this tool requires that every layer of our motifs is converted to a smart object. Now, there is a way to do this manually, so you can click on any one of your motif layers, right-click it, and then go down to Convert to Smart Object. And this totally works, no problem, but it's kind of time-consuming. And as you know, we have quite a few layers of motifs on here. I mean, our mushrooms alone are something like 20 different layers. And so there is a faster way that we can do this. And that's by defining our own keyboard shortcut. So again, all credit goes to Kat Cocolette for teaching me this trick in her Skillshare course, and I'm going to show you how you can do it too. So if you go up to Edit, and then Keyboard Shortcuts, then it'll open up this menu here that'll allow you to define a keyboard shortcut for any tool or any action within Photoshop. So we'll navigate to that Convert to Smart Objects tool, and you can click on this caret menu under Layer, and scroll down quite a bit until we reach this Smart Objects section. Now, if you have not defined a keyboard shortcut for this tool, it's likely that this will be blank for you, just like all the rest of these here. But what you can do is you can click on this area here under where it says Shortcut, and you can type in whatever keyboard command you'd like to use for this tool. I use Command Y because that's what Kat used in her Skillshare class, and it works for me. Now, just a warning that if you do use the same shortcut here, you are going to get a warning from Photoshop that says this keyboard shortcut is already used for something else. And I can't even remember what the tool or the action was, but it was something that I never ever used, and I was okay with overwriting it. So if you're okay with that too, you can do the same thing and just hit OK. So now if we go to each of our layers, instead of having to right click, we can just click any layer and hit Command Y, and it'll be converted to a smart object. So I'm going to go through and do the rest of these things, and I will be back shortly when I'm done with that. All right, so now all of our layers have been converted to smart objects, and we're ready to open up that pattern preview. We can go up to the View menu and click Pattern Preview. We're going to get a warning from Photoshop that says Pattern Preview works best with smart objects. And so this is why we transformed all of those layers into smart objects. If you don't do this, it says here that pixel layers may show unexpected results. And that's true. There's some weird things that can happen in Pattern Preview if you don't first transform into smart objects. So since we did do that, we can hit OK. And then Photoshop is going to open up this magical tool. If this is your first time seeing this, I hope you're as excited as I was the first time that I encountered it. And this tool essentially builds out the repeat for you and allows you to see exactly what your canvas would look like once it's defined as a repeating pattern. So you can see right now, this isn't the most pleasing repeating pattern because there's obvious stripes of where there's nothing, but it is pretty magical because it's going to allow you to see this repeat update in real time. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to keep it zoomed out a little bit just for effect. We can, with this tool activated, this pattern preview activated, we can click on any one of our motifs and we can move it around, and it's going to move in every repeat of this pattern. And so this, like I said, it will allow us in real time to see how our pattern is looking. So I'm going to hit Command 0 to zoom back into our main canvas here. Now, one of the first steps that I often do once I'm in pattern preview is just kind of spread out my motifs a little bit and move them around, because really, I'm probably not going to want all my flowers, all my ferns, and all of my mushrooms in lines like this in my final pattern. So I'm just going to kind of move things around without really an eye for the final pattern, just to get a sense of how things look when they're next to each other, how things look when they're not next to each other, and so on. And so I'm just going to spread all these motifs out, and I will speed this part up, and I will catch you back once I have done this. Okay, so now everything is pretty much spread out. And like I said before, I didn't necessarily do this with an eye for what I actually want the final pattern to look like. I really just wanted to get a better sense of what looks good next to each other, what doesn't look good next to each other. How do these things look when they're not kind of as rigid as they were in the original painting? And again, since we're in pattern preview, we can zoom out and just get an idea of what this repeat is looking like. Some things we like, some things we want to avoid. For example, something that I noticed right off the bat is that these big ferns are kind of lined up with each other, and they create these kind of rivers down the pattern here. You might like that, or you might find that it makes it a little bit too easy to see that repeat. So this would be a note to myself to say, okay, let's spread out those ferns a little bit more.
So I'm going to show you a few of the tools that I use most often.
And I'm about to set you loose on your own to do the same thing. So there's really just a few that I lean on for like 99% of my pattern building. The first one, and probably most common, is just the transform tool. So we can select any of our motifs. I'm going to select just this yellow flower here. And if we hit Command T, that's going to activate that transform tool. Now, one of the ways I'll use this the most is just to rotate motifs. So if you hover over the corner here, you'll see that curved arrow, and you can just click it to drag and turn these motifs around. You can also use it to rescale your motif. So if you want it bigger and to keep the same aspect ratio, you can hold Shift and just scale up or scale down. Or sometimes you may want to not keep the same height to width ratio. And so in that case, you can just freely transform it however you like. Sometimes you'll need to do this to fit a specific space or to make it look a little bit different from some of the other motifs that you have. I'm going to hit Command Z to return that back to how it was before, and I'll hit Enter to apply this change. So another tool that I often use is one that is going to allow me to duplicate my motifs. So while any motif is selected, again, we'll just play off of this yellow flower here. If you're on a Mac, you can hold down the Option key and you can see this double arrow comes up for your cursor. So again, hold down Option. I believe if you're on a Windows, this would be the Alt key. And then you can just click the layer you have selected and drag, and a duplicate will be created. So this is again where sometimes that transform tool is going to come in handy, because you don't necessarily want your two motifs to look exactly the same. So if we select our duplicate and hit Command T, maybe what we can do is just rotate it around a little bit, and it might look totally different or not be immediately recognizable as the exact same motif. Another thing that I'll often do is to undo Edit, Transform, and then Flip Horizontal. This is probably something I should create a keyboard shortcut for, because I use this all the time. But if we click Flip Horizontal, that's going to flip our selected layer along that horizontal axis. So I think this is another way of really helping your motifs kind of look different and stand on their own two legs. And again, this is an area where sometimes I might play with the ratio and maybe make this one a little bit wider or a little bit squatter than the original to make it look just a little bit different. So I'm going to hit Command 0 to zoom out again, and truly those are the main tools that I'm going to use. One last thing to note here too, though, is that right now you can see that all of our motifs are pointing in the same direction, meaning it's fairly clear that this way is up and this way is down. Now that might be fine, and there may be no issues with that depending on what your end goal is for your repeat. But from my experience, one of the very first patterns that I posted online, somebody commented, the very first person who commented said something along the lines of, it's a cute pattern, but as a sewist, it's really complicated when our fabric is unidirectional, because it can get confusing to keep track of the direction of your fabric when you're doing things like flipping your fabric in and out and putting it right sides together or apart, and flipping things inside out and upside down. And maybe by the end of the day, you might have sewn a skirt where all your trees are upside down. And that's kind of a challenge. And so what she said to me is that having at least a bidirectional or, some form of multi-directional pattern is oftentimes a lot easier for sewists. So if your end goal is fabric, that's something you may want to consider. And for that, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just select a motif and hit that transform tool again, so Command T, and I'll just rotate it to be upside down or, pointing in whatever direction that we want. And so that's something you may want to play with, depending again on your end goal. So I'm just going to go ahead and build this pattern the way that I see fit. I'm going to let you loose to do the same thing, but I'll speed up this building process and I will catch you back here once I'm kind of happy with the way that it looks. Okay, so I think that I've organized everything in a way that I like. I think that it's pretty well distributed. And as you've likely seen, if you watch me build out this pattern, I often will kind of zoom out and just see if there's any like big gaps or areas where I need to fill. And so when it's zoomed out really far, you can certainly see the repeat, but the idea is that it's not super duper obvious and that it all kind of flows together. And I think we've achieved that here. So I'm going to hit Command 0 to zoom again to that canvas frame. And one last step that I personally like to do to my repeating patterns is to add back a watercolor paper textured background. Now, this is certainly not necessary, but I like the kind of organic feel that it gives these patterns. So what I've done is I actually scanned a piece of my watercolor paper and I played with it a little bit in Photoshop to make a seamless repeat texture using this paper. And so I can navigate to this file on my drive, and I'm just going to drag this directly into my document. This is formatted to be 24 inches by 24 inches, just like our canvas. And we can even zoom out again just to confirm that this is indeed seamless. We're not seeing any like super obvious seams or anything. It just looks like a giant sheet of paper. So I'm going to hit enter to confirm this. Before I go on, I do want to let you know that if you want access to this exact same file, this 24 inch by 24 inch cold press watercolor paper repeating texture, I have made it available for you for download. And so there's a link in the description of this video where you can download this same 24 inch by 24 inch watercolor paper. So once we've placed it, you might be thinking, well, we just covered up our entire pattern. And what we can do is actually go into this blending mode menu here. And so right now it's set to normal, but if we click this, I'm going to bring it down to multiply. And voila, there is our pattern again. And now we can see that this texture pattern is visible through our motifs as well. So if I were to select this cold press watercolor paper and move it around, my computer's a little bit slow, but hopefully you can see that it is also moving through these motifs as well. So there's a couple things that you might want to play with here. You can toy with other blending modes and see if there's anything else that you like better, but multiply is kind of my go-to. You can also play with the opacity of this layer. So if we think, well, I like the paper texture, but this is a little bit too much, you could make it a little bit less opaque if you wanted to do that. And so there's a lighter version there, still with a bit of that watercolor paper texture, but maybe a little less intense than at full opacity. You can also, if you want, change the color of your background here. So right now we've been working with this default white background, but what we could do is we could create a new layer. So there's a few ways you could do this. You could go to this menu here and select solid color. And this will allow us to create a new background layer. And so you can use this menu to manually define that background color and just hit OK when you're happy with it. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll do a bunch of these different background colors and I'll just call them, maybe we'll say forest green, and I'll just play with different backgrounds just to see how I like it. For right now, I'm going to turn that green one off and we're going to stick right back with our white background and with that watercolor paper texture. Now we're at a point where we can actually define our pattern in Photoshop. So what I would recommend is that you keep pattern preview open because sometimes it can be a little bit weird. And you can go up into edit and then define pattern. When you click this, you can name this whatever you want. Forest floor black is going to be the default because that's the name of our document. But maybe what I'll do is I'll call this forest floor textured white. I often do this to signify to myself this is textured because this is a version that has the watercolor paper texture on it, and then white to describe the background that I used. And then you can hit OK. And just like that, we have created our pattern.
So I hope you found that really helpful, and I hope you found pattern preview as magical as I did the first time I encountered it. I was like, no way. So in the very next video, I'm going to show you how I export my files so that you can upload them to places like Spoonflower or even your own social media. And then after that, I'm going to include a little bonus video about recoloring your artwork in Photoshop, which is really exciting. So stay tuned, and I'll see you very soon for that video.